starts out on his warm-up laps. Today is the first day of time trials for the 77th running of the Indianapolis 500. And the challenge seems so simple and yet can be so terrifying to a race driver. Drive 4 laps, 10 miles, as fast as you can. At the end of the day, we'll know who sits on the pole. At the end of the 4 days of time trials, the 33 fastest will be chosen, and the field will be set for the 500-mile race.
Well, this is the second biggest crowd in motor racing, second only to the race itself. And those who succeed today will bask in the limelight for the 2 weeks that lead up to the race itself. But to drive 4 perfect laps here is extremely tough. A driver may take as many risks today in those 4 laps as he takes in the sum total of the rest of the year. So what you earn here today, you really work for.
And keeping track of the runs from a perch high above turn 2 is Bobby Unser.
Well, Paul and Sam, I'm in a real unique place today. Right here in the Hallman Suite in turn 2 where I can see how the wind affects them as the day goes on. How they do on the rumble strip that we've all been reading about, hearing about. This is a real good place. I'm probably only 75 feet away from where the race cars will be going 210 miles an hour. I think it's going to be really unique, and I hope everybody likes it.
On the track on the main straightaway, completing the first of 2 potential warm-up laps is Stan Fox. Bobby mentioned that the track has been changed and changed a great deal since last year. You'll notice in this area, grass right up next to the white line. The turns are now 60 feet wide. That's the way the track was originally planned. And there you can see a warm-up lane and a pit entrance and exit lane. It's changed the way they drive this track, and we'll be watching that throughout the afternoon. This is the first day of our ABC coverage of time trials. We'll have coverage again next week on Wide World of Sports and on the final day of time trials next Sunday. And of course, that all leads up to the 77th running of the Indianapolis 500 on May 30th. So we hope you enjoy the coverage. Stan Fox, as he heads for the start-finish line, takes the green flag, and Stan Fox is on a qualification run. Down right next to the line in the first turn. There are rumble strips just inside that line. Now he's by Bobby Unser.
And he's coming right to it. He's going down to touch the white line, Paul. Out of the very conservative line, out of the turn, down the back straightaway, looking good.
Bobby, another of the rules changes, of course, is that they have less downforce because of changes to the rules that concern the aerodynamics. So the car is a little bit more delicate to balance through the turns, and as we've said, the turns themselves a little narrower. We're looking at the trap speed for the back straightaway. 222 does not compare favorably with the mid-230s by some of the top runners.
Down through the first turn in the short chute at the south end, waiting for the first lap time and speed. Stan Fox on a qualification attempt. He practiced this car very little in the week. This is about the speed he ran, 217.2. He thought that was good enough to get into the race, parked the car, and brought it out for this practice. Let's go to Jackaroo.
Paul, behind me, the 1969 winner, Mario Andretti of the Indianapolis 500, is preparing for his first qualification attempt. Interesting to note that he's been fast all month, but this morning in the final practice session, he was the quickest at 225 miles per hour plus. His car tends to develop a push early in the day. They don't seem too concerned about it. Let's go further up pit road and check in with my colleague, Gary Gerald.
Jack, 3 years ago, 1990, Arie Luyendyk had a sensational month of May, went on to win the race. 2 days ago, he established the fastest speed in practice thus far this year at just over 226 miles per hour. Arie, 7th in line, waiting for his opportunity. But as the temperatures have warmed, he's concerned. He says his car has worked best when it's been cool. He's not that confident that he can challenge for the pole, despite the fact that he has been the fastest man in practice. Paul?
A beautiful bright sun shines down on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It makes the chrome on these cars and their beautiful paint jobs sparkle. Stan Fox has completed 2 laps, now completing his 3rd lap. And he has been averaging 217.1 miles an hour. Now, if he takes the 4th and final lap, he will automatically be on the pole because he's the only qualifier thus far. 217.9, still averaging 217, actually 217.112 miles an hour. He started in the more traditional route in the midgets, Bobby Unser.
Yes, he did, and he's a very good midget driver, doing very well in Indianapolis. He's going very good through here. Kind of a conservative line.
And they waved him off. They waved him off, Bobby.
Well, that surprises me, Paul. He's been running 217 miles an hour, and I think that that's more than fast enough to make the field.
The crews each have a yellow flag and sit down at the far north end of the pit area. If they're not satisfied with the performance, they can wave that yellow flag, and that will abort the run. Now, Stan Fox will have 2 more attempts on that car in which to qualify. And there goes Mario, the 69 winner of the Indy 500.
Mario Andretti taking to the track for what obviously is going to be one of the great tension-filled runs of his career.
Looking to start his 28th Indy 500.
It's been 24 years since in 1969 Mario rolled into winner's circle. You see him there. That's Andy Granatelli in the red jacket actually kissing Mario. At that point in Mario's career, it looked as if he would win race after race after race here. As everybody knows, he has not won again since that moment.
Mario Andretti, who has been consistently quick in this Ford-powered machine. And today's battle will, of course, be one of engines as well as drivers. Mario Andretti starts that qualification run.
He is the only driver to win IndyCar races in 4 decades.
Mario was the fastest in the morning practice session this morning.
He won the pole here in 66, 67, seemed to be headed for maybe a dozen more poles, but it wasn't again until 1987 that he won. So were he to snag it today, you get a sense of how dear it would really be to him.
Mario's best speed of the month is 225.4 miles an hour for a single lap. Now he's on the home stretch and passes under Dwayne Sweeney's green flag as he continues his run. Mario Andretti completes now. Lap number 1 is already over to the backstretch as we look for the time and speed.
He's looking really good over in turn 2, Paul. He's down just underneath the white line when he goes through here. Just barely touching the rumble strips and out very close to the wall.
Mario had a little spin in the warm-up lane right at the end of yesterday, just a few minutes before 6 o'clock. It doesn't seem to have affected him at all.
Mario's first lap, 223.964 miles an hour.
Another interesting thing, Paul, is this is the same car that Mario drove in Phoenix and won with.
His son Michael watches at home in Nazareth, Pennsylvania today. Remember, Michael was such a key player and so strong in last year's race.
This year, Mario, of course, is teamed with Nigel Mansell, who will be coming up a little bit later on and also has a shot at the pole. This team very strong, the Newman-Haas team.
2 laps are complete. He's averaging 223.6 miles an hour. It would certainly put Mario Andretti on the provisional pole.
Of all the people to be most affected by the narrowing of the curves, it must be Mario Andretti, who used to dip here way down where the grass is now.
Mario Andretti now working the last lap, Bobby Unser.
He's coming in a little bit outside the white line this time, very close to the outer wall, down the back straightaway, staying a little bit wider than normal, but he's moving good.
Averaging 223.7 miles an hour, completing his 4th and final lap of a qualification attempt for the 77th running of the Indy 500.
When Mario first saw that grass down where the warm-up lane used to be, he said, "Where did the track go?" He seems to be making pretty good use of what's left of it.
Mario in the past has had a reputation for running very low below that white line. He can't do that now, unless, of course, he wants to put on some normal tires. The slicks won't run there. So 4 laps are complete for Mario Andretti. And for the moment, at least, he is the pole sitter with an average of 223.414 miles an hour. Mario Andretti has qualified for the Indianapolis 500. But there is still so much more to come on this, the first day of time trials. The skyline of the city of Indianapolis, just about 8 miles from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where qualifications are underway. And Jack Arute is standing by in the pits.
Mario Andretti a little bit slower than you practiced this morning.
Well, the track is definitely different. I can assure you, on the last lap, I just hung on all I could through turn 2, and I had to just back out of it. You know, I would have had a piece of the wall, but.
What effect has the changes in the track done to qualifying?
Well, just that. It put a bigger, tighter radius in the corners, and the car is much more critical to temperature and to track conditions. So, again, when the temperatures are this hot, you just don't have the grit to go around.
Well, you'll still be looking for his second victory, Paul. Remember back in 1969, he'd like to do it in 93.
And Jack, remember 10 years ago when Teo Fabi was a rookie pole sitter at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He was out, took 2 laps. The first lap at 218.1. The second lap dropped to 217.7. And Teo Fabi decided to abort the run and bring the car into the pits. There's been some tremendous history since last we were here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Rick Mears over the winter announced his retirement. 1 4-time Indy champion gone. And just this morning, just before the start, A.J. Foyt announced his retirement. We'll have more on that as well. It was a very poignant moment here. But a young man ready to come up who had less than great luck last year, broke his leg in the running of the Indy 500. Jimmy Vasser should be next out to qualify. Originally on the list, though, was Robbie Gordon in the 41 car of the A.J. Foyt stable. And he touched a wall with that car this morning, and so he is not out for a qualification run. That moves to the next position in the draw, and it is Jimmy Vasser.
Vasser was the first man to qualify to get out on the track back when the track opened a week ago.
Some of the big names yet to come out and qualify. It should be a spectacular afternoon. Jimmy Vasser, Phil Casey is his crew chief. His top speed thus far in the month, 219.191 miles an hour, Bobby.
Yes, well, the thing about the track, Paul, I just want to mention real quick that it is changing a little bit over here. Sometimes it's like when Teo Fabi was running, he ran 220 this morning. In the same car, he was down to 217, 218, and I think some of it's caused by a little bit of wind change. Not bad wind, but a little bit of gusting over here in turn 2. And that's what we heard Mario complaining about a little bit. He was pushing as it comes off, meaning the wind was coming out of the west.
Bobby, the interesting thing, of course, is that the weather has been changing here all week long. It's been hot, it's been cold, it's been windy, it's been sunny, it's been cloudy. We've really experienced everything, and some of the recontouring of the infield of the track being made into a championship golf course, I think has caused the eddying of winds that never really occurred before, especially near where you are coming off of turn 2.
Well, I just saw Jimmy Vasser coming off the turn, Sam, and for example, he wiggled a little bit coming off over here, so maybe we're going to have a few problems in turn 2 today.
Jimmy Vasser had a terrific run, the race at Phoenix last month, finishing 3rd. Now he looks for Dwayne Sweeney's green flag. There it is, and he starts his qualification run. He moves over just a little bit to avoid a piece of debris, and then moves down right along the white line in the first turn. Jimmy Vasser across the short chute at the south end, Bobby.
Yes, and he's coming through turn 2 really good. And again, as he comes off, a little bit smoother than the last time, but he got over closer to the wall. So he's trying to use more racetrack, which means he's probably pushing just a little bit over here.
Each lap here is 2 1/2 miles around. Looking for the backstretch trap speed. That's a trap right at the end of the back straightaway, 223 miles an hour. By comparison, the faster cars during practice have been up at 235.
Yeah, and as I look at the wind direction here, they have a tailwind going down the backstretch. So that gives you an idea that the building heat, the air is getting hotter, the ambient temperature is going up, is affecting their top speed.
Jimmy Vasser's fastest lap in the month, as we mentioned, 219.1. His first lap here in qualifying at 217.2. So he's fallen off from his fastest speed. And you see there, too, the time to beat was 223.4 miles an hour, Mario Andretti's time.
Remember, these are 2.65-liter turbocharged engines. They give about 800-plus horsepower. This is a Chevy engine. There's a big battle this year between Chevrolet and Ford for engine honors here.
Let's go to Jack Arute.
And Paul, the lady race car driver, the woman that was Rookie of the Year in 1992, is the next car out. In the spirit of the American woman, Lynn St. James from Daytona Beach, Florida. I just spoke to her moments ago, asked her what the magic number for her would be. She said a 219 mile an hour average. Hasn't quite attained that yet in practice, though.
But Jack, you can see that's why Stan Fox maybe didn't take his 2:16, 2:17. I think the prevailing wisdom is that 2:19 is what you need, but the track is slow right now, and maybe a 2:18, 2:17 would do.
But Sam, no threat of rain so far, so people feel they might be able to come back and still put the car in the fields later today.
Good point.
Jimmy Vasser averaging 217.4 miles an hour. Very likable young man. His best finish in the Indianapolis 500, 21st. With that crash last year, about the halfway point of the race. Bobby Unser, how's he looking in turn two?
Well, Paul, as he comes into turn 2, I notice he stays a little bit above the white line, but means they're probably going into a push. And it's probably, like I said before, a little bit due to the wind. If you'll notice, he's going to slow down just a little bit on this lap. He's getting to turn 2 a little bit slower.
The real question for many of these cars is how slow can you go and safely make it into the field? The conventional wisdom late yesterday seemed to be 215 miles an hour. Jimmy Vasser is in the high 216s, but they decide to wave it off. So apparently the conventional wisdom, Sam, is changing.
Well, I think Jack's point that they're going to wait for later may be a valid one. Jimmy Vasser, we've talked about the changing of the guard. He's just 27. We're going to see a lot more of him. Here's Lynn St. James ready to go.
You know, I just wanted to mention here on this these speeds that the guys are calling off, Paul and Sam. I'm just not too sure they're doing good. Historically, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway gets more wind in the afternoon than it does in the morning or early in the day as we are right now. These guys, some of them, may be making a mistake because speeds this afternoon could very well be harder than they are right now.
Lynn St. James voted the Rookie of the Year at the Indianapolis 500 last year, the second woman to qualify and drive in an Indianapolis 500. Janet Guthrie was the first.
So far, 594 men and 2 women, including Lynn St. James, have run this race since 1911. She's part of history.
Now, Sam and Paul, one of the things I'm noticing different about Lynn St. James as compared to like Vasser and Mario Andretti and stuff, she's really warming up the car slow, getting the oil warm in the engine. For example, when Mario came through here right out of the pits, he was wide open, flat on it. Lynn probably running a quarter of a throttle, getting the engine nice and warmed up.
But Mario, of course, elected to take the green flag at the completion of his first of 2 warm-up laps. Everyone else has gone to the second lap. Bobby, I wonder if Mario was a little smarter, not letting the temperatures come up too high.
Well, I think it's more of a tire thing he was worried about, but here with these horsepower they have available today, it's like a flywheel. You need to really get that flywheel swinging to get going, so I was a little surprised Mario did that first lap by.
Of course, it's a little bit of a personality thing, too. Lynn is very methodical. It would be typical of her to take all the practice that she can get. Typical of Mario to come tearing out of there and want the pole.
Let's go pit side. Gary Gerald.
And setting at the head of the line, Paul Tracy. This will be his attempt for a second Indy 500. The crew disappointed because it is warming up so rapidly. They're concerned about what kind of speed they can get. We just got a quick word with his tutor, one man who's won it 6 times the pole, that is Rick Mears. Mears a little concerned as well. They just sit and wait while Lynn St. James continues her run.
Lynn St. James has just taken the green flag and begins a qualification attempt. Earlier in the week, she was running down around 211, 212 miles an hour. And then yesterday, suddenly they got the car hooked up, and she ran laps at 217, her fastest at 217.171.
She was 11th in the race last year. A very steady drive on a day where a lot of drivers made mistakes and hit the wall. There's no question that Lynn St. James can finish these races and in good style. What she needs to show in her resume, she can really race with people. That she has failed to do so far, but that's not part of what she has to do here today.
The first 2.5 miles of her 10-mile qualification attempt are into the record book. Lynn St. James at 213.316 miles an hour. Splits the difference between where she was practicing earlier in the week and where she was yesterday. But that 213, I think, probably approximates the reduction in speed that most cars have seen today.
I do too. You see, of course, the wings, front and rear on these cars. That's only part of what helps to push them down onto the road. The underside of the car is specially shaped in order to create a venturi for the air passing under the car. That sucks the car down to the track. So the total aerodynamic package, several thousand pounds of downforce.
Lynn St. James completed lap number 2.
Speed report.
And she continues at about the same average, 213.078 miles an hour. Overall average of 2 laps, 213.197 miles an hour. At this speed, though, she will qualify for the moment at least alongside of Mario Andretti in the front row.
Now, Paul and Sam, she's not using enough racetrack. She's not getting down close enough to the white line. She's not going out close enough to the wall. She's running too conservative, and her speeds are indicating that. She is in a Ford-powered car, so we know she's got a lot of horsepower.
And they wave this attempt off as well. The 213, not nearly the speed that they would like to have. Now look at this. Earlier in the day, just before the qualification run, A.J. Foyt took out to the racetrack and made his final lap because A.J. Foyt announced his retirement this morning.
Next week on Wide World of Sports, you'll see the results of a viewer poll held to determine the all-time favorite episode. And AJ's 67 win is one of the contenders, so I hope you'll be watching for that.
Let's go to the pitch and Jack.
And Paul, in the annals of IndyCar history, 35 times this man has qualified for the Indy 500, but not this time. You've called it quits.
Well, we really did, Jackie. You know, we had some problems this morning when Robbie got in the fence, and, you know, my car was all set to go, and I went out and shook it down yesterday a little bit. Shook it down this morning, and I decided right then it comes time to step down, and you can't be a driver and a car owner both. And
well, you said that you were out there and you just clipped off a 222-mile-per-hour lap, and then the caution came on.
Well, that's true, and you know, I never tried to show everything. The car was working beautiful. I think that was one of the hardest decisions because my car, you know, it stood a good shot. It's sitting up front, and it was driving beautiful, and I just decided it's time to give it up.
Now, an awful lot of times before you've said, I quit, and you've come back. Is this for real?
Oh, yeah, this is for real. I've never said that I really quit. I always told you and everybody else that whenever it hits me, it's time to step down. And for some reason, after he hit the wall, I went back out, and that's when I run fast. And I said, I come in the garage, and everybody's looking. I didn't say nothing, and I talked to Robbie, and he knew nothing, and all this was put together, and I says, I'm through. And Mr. Bandel with U.S. Tobacco, he's retiring. He said, we'll just retire together, and then we're concentrating on the motorsports. And so Mr. Bandel, you know, he was wanting me to quit anyway, so I just congratulate Lou Bandel.
Well, Paul, he wears sunglasses, not always, but today it's to hide some redness in his eyes because there were a lot of tears when he crossed that start-finish line for the last time.
The grand champion, A.J. Foyt, makes it official. And perhaps emblematic of the changing of the guard, here is Paul Tracy. Brash young man, very, very fast, just off his first IndyCar victory at Long Beach, California, and now begins his qualification run.
Yeah, in effect, in the seat that would have traditionally been occupied by Rick Mears, winner of 4 of the last 7 poles here at Indy. So we're looking at a young man, 24 years old, where an old veteran once sat. So there's the changing of the guard. Parenthetically, I'm thrilled for AJ. He did it spontaneously, which I think is the right way, and I think it's fantastic.
Bobby Unser, he came through turn 2 at 217 miles an hour. How's he looking?
He's whistling through turn 2. He has a really good line. He's using all the racetrack, touching the white line as he goes through, right out close to the wall. He's going to be moving.
Bobby, you, of course, involved with the Penske team for many years. It seems strange for them not really to be favored in the pole run here. Their speeds have not been in the top 4 or 5 as the month has developed. Do you think it might be a function of the difference between the Ford engine with maybe a little bit more and these Chevy engines?
Well, for sure, Sam. We wondered what was going to happen as time went on, but as it's gone on, we've watched the other races. Now we come here and we have radar guns all over the track. We see the Fords are definitely running down the straightaways faster here at Indianapolis. Chevrolet will be working about it. Some of it, of course, has been a controversy over whether Ford has an advantage over some technical rules or not, but nonetheless, the Fords seem to have the most power today.
Paul Tracy completes his first lap at 221 miles an hour. Penske cars have won 10 of the last 16 poles here at the Brickyard. Gary Gerald is with Roger Penske.
Roger Penske, you watch your driver finish his second lap. The temperatures have warmed up. The speeds have come down. What will you take?
Well, we'll take over a 220 for sure. I think that the track's probably slowed down a couple miles an hour, but he's got a good run going.
Tell us a little bit about the progress of Paul Tracy and what it meant to get that first win under his belt. Will that make him really break through and become a prime contender here in this 500?
Well, I think having a race under his belt here, didn't run the whole way, but certainly the way he's run in the first 3 races should put him well in a position to win this race.
And of course, you got Emerson Fittipaldi later. Are you going to go at your designated spot, or perhaps wait until later in the day when it's a bit cooler?
We'll go at our designated spot, I'm sure.
Okay, the speeds continue here for Paul Tracy. We look over Rick Mears' shoulder. It looks like a 220 lap, Paul.
Yeah, if they're looking for 220 miles an hour, he's averaging 220.7. First lap, 221.005. Second lap, 220.756. Third lap, 226.15. Not nearly as fast as Paul has been in the month. He was up at 224.3 for his fastest lap, and on Sunday and Monday of this week, he was the fastest car on the track.
A very intense month for Paul. His wife, Tara, is due with their first child on May 27th. That's just 3 days before the race. He's been calling home every day. She wishes he was there. He has, of course, got a job to do here.
And Penske Racing takes the 4th and final lap, and this car is now qualified. 218.829 miles an hour for the final lap. As we look at the Valvoline speed board, he averaged 220.298 miles an hour. That puts him second quick to Mario Andretti. Qualifications continue at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Car 21, Jeff Andretti, is on the course. What an amazing comeback story this is. Badly injured in last year's Indianapolis 500. He battled back, and Jeff Andretti is ready to qualify. In fact, has already completed the first lap at 218.187 miles an hour.
Well, there were those who said last year that this youngest Andretti wasn't mentally tough enough to race. I think his accident, his serious accident here last year near the end of the race, changed all that. It's a remarkable journey through pain and anguish through the year, and it has brought him back to this track very tough.
2 cars have qualified thus far. For the moment at least, Mario Andretti sits on the pole. Paul Tracy is second quick. Jeff Andretti could sit on the outside of the front row as the provisional results go at the moment, but of course there's a tremendous lineup of drivers waiting to qualify here at Indianapolis. Jeff Andretti's second lap, 217.659 miles an hour.
Well, as he came out of turn 2, he almost got the wall. His rear went out really close. It was controlled. He drove the car out there, but he's obviously pushing a little bit. Couldn't have missed the wall by over 6 inches.
You see him come out there. His average speed now, 217.9 miles an hour. Very special hookup, Jackaroot. Mario
Andretti is checking the times of his youngest son, Jeff Andretti, and Michael Andretti, your Formula One son, is on the phone. Mario, have at it.
Well, Mike, slipping and sliding out there.
I can see it. Jeff's scaring me to death out there. He's every inch of the track.
I know it's my last lap. I just hung on, but you know, we just gave it all we got this morning when it was a bit cooler. You know, it felt pretty good, but I was afraid that's what it was going to be. But you know, we decided to go, as you know, and I hope it's all right.
Mario,
they just waved off Jeff's lap.
I think they did the wrong thing.
Yeah, that was a big
mistake. Yeah.
His average was 217.992 miles an hour. Michael, you wouldn't have waved that off, right?
No way.
No, not the way conditions are. You can see everybody has dropped down
218 would be
time.
plenty safe.
We'll take a look at his times once again. There they are, Michael. Mario, you know what they are. You're not happy with them waving him off. What about your position, though, Mario? It's looking a little more solid, perhaps?
Well, you know, it's I don't want to speculate because you know, it's going to get better later on. You know, from 4:30 on. So it depends who waits. You know, it could be. But then somebody could go quicker now because it's all a matter of guessing on. We follow the weatherman too much, I suppose, and that's all we had to go by. And we anticipated some clouds this morning and the weather to be quite a bit cooler, but it just turned around big time. So I think we missed the setup somewhat, for sure.
Well, Mario, we know you want to get down and talk to Jeff about that qualification attempt. Michael, good to see you finish one in Formula One.
It looks as if Ari Leyendijk's ready to give his try to unseat this man off the pole.
So now we wait for Ari Leyendijk, the quickest man thus far during the month of May.
And Paul, Ari is like a mirror, really. He walks around the pits, and when he's not feeling good, he's kind of closed. He doesn't see the people around him. He doesn't react to the fans. this whole month. If you're 100 feet away, he'll catch your eye and give you a wink or a wave. Ari is having a month a lot like the one he had back in 1990 when he qualified third and went on to win the race. He's very, very confident.
He turned a practice lap at 226.182 miles an hour. Did that on Thursday. That is the fastest lap of the month by any car that was practicing. And now the green flag comes out. Possible run for the pole here by Arie Luyendyk.
It's interesting, he was not particularly successful in any of the first 3 races of this year leading up to this, and suddenly the team, the Chip Ganassi team, has found the magic.
He's in turn 2, Bobby.
He comes out of turn 2 or through turn 2 looking really good, but what's happening down here is it's becoming gusty. The wind, for example, in between the suite where I'm sitting and the grandstand is starting to get to the race cars. So you can see the guys being a little bit conservative.
220 on the backstretch. That's very slow. Gary Gerald, you have an update?
Chip Ganassi has gone down to turn 4. They'll make the decision whether to wave it off. We asked the crew up here at start-finish line what they'd take. Mike Hall, the team manager, says we think anything over 220 will take automatically. But of course, the final call comes from Chip in turn 4.
And not anywhere near it. 215.254. The speed on the first lap. 215.254. That's an 8-mile-an-hour drop from Mario Andretti's fastest 4-lap average, which is the fastest average of the day, and provisionally has Mario on the pole.
Oh yeah, that's not a function of the heat of the day or the wind or anything. That's a mechanical thing, and you can see him pulling.
He's giving it up.
Yeah, yeah.
We know, Paul and Sam, as they come through turn 2, like when Ari is last lap and watch, he's really got his hands turned a long ways. Means that the car is pushing. The wind is changing. That's what's bothering the guys right now. We really don't have a lot of heat yet, but the wind is obviously changing. I watch the flags blow one way. Your windsock on that side of the track will blow another way. When I look down into turn 3, sometimes it's blowing a different direction. So I'm sure that the guys just don't have their chassis set right for all these different wind conditions.
One of the real problems, swirling winds, as we look at the windsock in the past few seconds, it's gone from 15 miles an hour and dropped down just a few seconds ago to almost dead calm. Here is Danny Sullivan, 85 winner of the Indianapolis 500, as he rolls out of the pit area. Next Saturday on ABC's Wide World of Sports, we'll be back here in Speedway for continuing coverage of the 500 time trial, as the best battle the clock to qualify for the world's greatest automobile race. And then next Sunday, well, we've got coverage of the time trials, and immediately following that, the International Race of Champions. So you want motorsports, ABC is the place to be.
You know, you think of the Planet Hollywood party that Danny had just a couple of weeks ago with Victoria Principal there, and it's a kind of hark back to the days of Danny as a kind of glamorous figure. But lately, he's been more and more serious about his motor racing. The image in my mind is after Long Beach, he and Julie, their son Driscoll, walking along with the stroller. Danny is family man, Danny is dedicated professional, taking the place of Danny as the glamour man.
Still warming up for a qualification attempt here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Danny Sullivan, the 1988 PPG Cup champion, 85 winner of the Indy 500.
I think the image that will always be associated with Danny Sullivan was what happened here in 1985. He passed Mario for the lead halfway through the race. He spun. Somehow he did not touch Mario or the wall and went on to win that race. I think that image is engraved in all of our minds. When you say Danny Sullivan, you think that.
A team that has been struggling, the Gallus team, to learn these new chassis, new to them. Remember, they ran the Galmer last year, but finally Danny Sullivan moved up to 223.675 miles an hour as his fastest lap in the month of May. Now he begins his qualification attempt. Still only 2 cars in the field, Mario Andretti and Paul Tracy, Bobby Hunter.
Well, he's looking very good coming down through turn 2. In fact, Danny's looking better than most of them have looked so far. He gets a little bit under the white line on the rumble strips, just a little bit, something we haven't been seeing very much down here.
He's been pretty much in eclipse in terms of his career since being let go by Penske at the end of 1990. He had that season with Alfa Romeo, and then last year was the development year for the Galmer car. I think this is one of his best shots that he's had in a while. Danny
Sullivan completes his first lap, flashes across the start-finish line. averaging 219.587 miles an hour. Now Jack Arute is with Ari Luyendyk.
And Paul, what we may be seeing is unfolding is good weather and a calculated decision, because you waved that lap off. You weren't happy, but you still feel you have a shot at the pole.
Well, we're trying to look for that, so we canceled this run. The car was pushing so bad I couldn't even make the corner. So, you know, we made
some bigger changes, though, in that last session.
Yeah, we made a big change, and it went the wrong way. So we'll come back, and hopefully it'll go the right way.
Paul, the thing to remember, it's been so long since we've had incredibly good weather the first day, is regardless of the number of times you present yourself on the line, you are still eligible for the pole position until 6 p.m. Indianapolis time. So Luyendyk, I'm sure, will be back later today.
The way they're qualifying, they should go through the lineup of cars that drew for qualifying yesterday fairly quickly, and then you can push your car into the line anytime you want.
Paul, Danny comes through turn 2 this time, and they can hear the rumble strips. It sounds like a little short siren that goes off. He's halfway down to the grass. Only about 6 inches more, he gets to the grass, but he's looking good.
Second lap for Danny Sullivan, 219.984. He's averaging 219.786 miles an hour as he completes his third lap. 1 to go.
Of course, the car changes underneath the driver as the laps go by. You lose about 8 pounds of fuel with each lap. So in addition to battling the track conditions, you battle a change in the car itself.
Paul Harkis, the chief mechanic on this car. Danny started in the third row each of the last 3 years. Now working his final lap.
Well, Paul, you know, this is certainly slower than what he's been running at a 223 early this morning, but he's really looking smooth through all the turns.
And it looks like they're going to accept this run, despite the fact that it's sub 220. Get the car in the field and start working it for race day. That'll give him another full week of tests on the race setup. So Danny Sullivan acknowledges the checkered flag indicating the end of his 10-mile run. He averaged 219.428 as you see all the speeds on the Valvoline speed chart there. The pole position, Mario Andretti, still 223 miles an hour. And yet to qualify, some key contenders. Scott Goodyear will be out next. He finished second last year here at Indianapolis. Al Unser, Eddie Cheever. Robbie Gordon in A.J. Foyt's car, that's a question mark. We'll just have to wait and see. But you can see there's a great deal to come yet in the first day of time trials, the run for the pole here at Indianapolis. So Scott Goodyear should be next out. And there is the Walker Motorsports Ford-powered car as the fire is lit in that engine. And the Canadian, winner of the Michigan 500 last year, second last year here at the Indianapolis 500, begins to roll away.
It's hard to believe that a driver with Scott Goodyear's level of accomplishment could still be considered an underdog, but that he is. As you said, he has the best record in the long races on the high-speed tracks last year and may very well have it again this year. His team, headed by Derek Walker, is definitely one of the most competent in the business.
You know, one of the things, Sam, that we're going to find out, going through turn 2, very conservative, just warming up right now, but what we're going to find out is does this team, Derek Walker, who I think is one of the better chief mechanics or team leaders here, he came from Penske, we're going to find out whether those guys right now are able to adjust for all the problems the other guys have been having.
You know, you think back, when you think of this man, Scott Goodyear, to last year, the closest finish in Indianapolis history, the blink of an eye. And you know, on his cool-off lap, he was in an agony of disappointment. He radioed back to Derek Walker, I failed, little realizing the import of what had actually happened. And of course, he created one of the most exciting and historic moments in Indy history.
Continuing on his warm-up, he picks up the pace. His top practice lap in this car, 224.6 miles an hour. He's also had his backup car out, what they call the T car, in his case 2T, and he's had that car at 221.822 miles an hour. Now he looks for the green flag. This is the second of his 2 warm-up laps. There it is. And Scott Goodyear begins a 10-lap qualification run. Gary Terrell, do you have an update?
We just chatted with Derek Walker before he headed to turn 4. We said, what'll you take? He said anything over 224, and then he laughed and he says, we just want to get it in the show, Gary. I said, well, will you consider going later in the day? And he said, no, we just want to get it in. Let's check in now with Jack, who is up with, I believe, Derek Walker.
Indeed, I am at the wave-off area. And Derek, you're going to determine the speed. You said 224. That was joking. What's serious?
224.
He's been very fast, and he's finishing his first lap. And these fellas here will get the lap before it's issued. They write it down, Paul.
I don't think you're going to see a 224 out of this lap. Good sense of humor in the team, though, as he's completed the first lap at 221.451.
2.5 miles an hour slow. What's the story?
No, we're just going to run the quickest 4 laps we can and get it in the field. If it's good enough to get on the front row, it'd be great.
Paul, they proved it before. You can start 33rd in the Indianapolis 500 and at least finish second.
Well, and at the moment, it is the second quick time of the day. If he can keep this average up, he'll move Paul Tracy out of the middle of the front row, and he is going faster on this second lap.
True, Paul. He's taken a lot of chances out here, though. He is not consistently. Here is his wife, Leslie, watching with obvious concern. Everyone knows how tense this month is here, and of course it reaches its focal point when the car is actually on the track for those 4 laps.
Second lap actually faster for Scott Goodyear, 222.14 miles an hour.
This is the stuff of a champion. He's having trouble with this car, and he's really gritted his teeth. He's driving it brilliantly. He's missed a couple of apexes on that first lap, but he's getting them now. He's really giving it a ride.
Well, if he continues this pace up, he will sit alongside Mario Andretti on the front row. Mario, the provisional pole holder at 223.4.
I think we said this is another one of the Ford engines. They're very, very tough under these circumstances, that the speed is going up still.
Lap continues to climb. He ran down the front stretch at 233 miles an hour. 222.497 miles an hour, the third lap for Scott Goodyear. On a hot day, he is turning in a remarkable performance.
Remember that his last laps around this place were in pursuit of Al Unser Jr. last year in that futile attempt to win. He is used to driving right over his head on this track.
Bobby, how's he looking in turn 2?
Well, nobody can say he's a dark horse down here. He looks like he's on a rail when he comes through here. One thing that's different is where the other guys are pushing a little bit with their front ends, Scott is very tight. If anything, his rear end is a little bit loose going through turn 2. But he really is looking good.
And lap 4 is faster yet. He breaks in the 223s, 223.297 miles an hour, averaging 222.3. Second quick of the day. We'll return with more of the Indianapolis 500 time trials after this message and a word from your ABC station. The run for the pole continues at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Here's the way they are at the moment, with Mario Andretti on the pole, Scott Goodyear just qualifying alongside, Paul Tracy outside. The only other qualifier, there have been a number of wave-offs, is Danny Sullivan, who of course at the moment would be inside the second row. Let's go to the pits and Gary Gerald.
And Scott Goodyear here with the helmet now off. You got faster on every lap. That must give you satisfaction.
Well, I'm certainly pleased. The guys in the Walker Motorsport team did a great job with the McKenzie car this month, and we've been creeping up on it all month. The Ford power plant gave us great speed today, and I was anticipating maybe running constant 223 areas, but we didn't get that in the first lap, but the other one started to come along, so it's good, real good to get in the show, and I guess we'll get ready for race day now.
We were comparing your laps with Mario's. Mario was a little slower than you on the straightaways, but he was quicker in the corner. Does that surprise you at all?
Well, you know, we learn as we go along, and I think we'd run a little bit more downforce today if I was to do it again, because track's getting hotter, it's greasy, and you need a little bit more downforce. So I was to do it again, I'd certainly do that and forsake the straightaway speed for the overall time. And I guess that comes with age and you're learning, I guess.
Well, the man who gave us a great thrill with the finish last year, right up there in the front row for the moment. Thanks, Scott. Let's go up to Jack Arute.
And Gary, a 4-time winner of the Indianapolis 500. Al Unser Sr. is strapping himself in Kenny Bernstein's car. He will be the next to take to the Brickyard, the 2.5-mile oval, to see where he will start in the 77th running of the Indy 500. Paul?
So as they prepare Al Unser on the track itself is Stefan Gregoire, the French karting champion in 1987, a veteran of Formula 3, and he has just completed his third lap with a wave-off. He was averaging 217.937 miles an hour, and they've decided that just simply wasn't fast enough.
It's a function of how ambitious they are for this young man that they would wave that off. He's that magical age of 24, the same as Tracy and Gordon. It seems to be the coming thing to be about of that generation. I think he is going to be a hot contender for Rookie of the Year.
You know, there's one thing, Sam and Paul, that you can't say about this guy, Stephen. He is trying. As he comes off of turn 2, the car takes 3 big wiggles. The third lap around, I really thought he was going to crash it, but he never got out of the throttle one time.
So now we wait for Al Unser. There's his son, Little Al, the reigning champion here at the Indianapolis 500. Watching as they finally strap him in. Now, the car owner of this car, of course, is Kenny Bernstein. But he's at Memphis Motorsports Park today. He's driving the Mid-South Nationals in his top fueler. But the good news is he's on the phone with us. Kenny, how are you?
Doing fine, Paul. How are you doing?
Well, we're having a great day up here. I hope the weather's good down there. You're in qualifying. How have you qualified thus far?
Well, right now we're sitting in 4th position, and the weather here is great. It is hot, 86 degrees here, so we're facing some of the same things I'm seeing on television right now. Slick racetrack.
What kind of times and speeds?
Last night we ran 497 at 290 miles an hour.
In the 4s, not bad at all.
No.
Good luck down there. Let's keep an eye on your car now as it begins to roll away. What kind of month have you had thus far, Kenny?
Well, it's been trying with 3 race cars. It's very difficult, believe me, but the team's done a great job and worked hard. Al's been a little slow coming up to speed, as well as Crawford. Guerrero's done real well, but we'll see how Al does today. It looks to me like the conditions have changed a lot. I hope the guys have got it together and do the best they can.
Kenny, this is Sam. Roberto Guerrero had problems with an oil leak this morning and is going to have to qualify with no practice this morning. Do you think that'll affect him?
I don't really think so, Sam. He's been awfully comfortable all week long in the 222, 223 range. Would have liked to have a little bit this morning, but sometimes going out there with all those cars isn't a good deal either, so he'll be fine. He's got a lot of confidence right now, and I think he'll get that Budweiser King around there pretty good.
Well, Kenny, you watch with us as he's on his warm-up. His best speed in this car, 217.265 miles an hour. But Kenny Bernstein, I bet you're hoping that this guy becomes the first 5-time winner of an Indy 500.
Oh, you bet. We'd like to get Al in there badly and give him that chance to win 5. Like I said, we've struggled a little bit with both Crawford and Al this month, and bringing them up to speed's been a little difficult. This morning, Al felt really good. I hope that it continues on. I hope the weather hasn't changed too much for him.
Right now, Jack Arute is with his son, Little Al.
Well, Little Al, you're an interested spectator. Did you say anything to your dad before he went out?
No, not really. There's nothing I can really tell Dad, you know. Just go out there and do the best, and he already knew that, so.
Now, what about your run? You may get the benefit of maybe a little bit cooler time now.
Well, I hope so. You know, I want some overcast to come over, and that'll help us quite a lot. And so we're pretty far down the line, and I see some clouds coming in, so hopefully it'll be overcast.
When a driver's far down the line, do you try and like pick the brains of the drivers that have already run? Do you go over and maybe mosey up to them and see if you can glean anything from them?
Yeah, pretty much. I've already talked to Danny, and then I ran into Rick Mears, and he said that Paul Tracy pushed pretty good, so, you know, which is what I was thinking the track was going to do anyway, so, you know, hopefully we'll be okay.
We'll let you watch your dad.
Yeah, thank you.
You can bet there are spies all up and down the pit area.
You know how times change. Just a year ago, Rick Mears was still very much in business and favored to have 5 wins here, break through that barrier. A.J. Foyt was still racing. As of this morning, A.J. Foyt has retired. Rick Mears, of course, retired last fall. The man you see on the track right now, Al Unser Sr., is the only person alive with a chance for 5 wins of the current crop of drivers.
26 Indy 500s behind him as Big Al, Bobby's brother, is in the short chute.
Here he comes through the short chute, Paul. He's very conservative, very clean. Looks like he's on a rail. The car doesn't wiggle. Everything looks good. Down the back straight in a good position.
Kenny Bernstein, Big Al, 218.087. What do you think?
Well, that's not really bad. I think that's pretty good for Al because that's as quick as he's gone all month. He did run 220 this morning, but as you know, it was much cooler this morning, so 218 is not bad. I don't know if they'll take that. I've left that decision up to John Nagler and the guys there.
Down the backstretch at 225, speed fell off in turn 3 to 212. So he's having some problems getting through the corners as well.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Speed fell off on lap number 2, 217.765 miles an hour, Bobby.
Well, this time he came down into turn 2, and he got clear down on the rumble strips, which means he's pushing a little bit. And when he came off of turn 2, he got really close to the outside wall, which again means that he was pushing a little bit. And I'm sure that's what's happening most of the way around the track, Paul.
He's averaging 217.9 miles an hour. If he takes it, that would be the slowest average thus far today, would put him in the middle of the second row.
This is, of course, the only racing he is doing outside of the IROC series, which has been so exciting this year, and of course, which his son, Little Al, is also involved in. That IROC stuff has been fantastic, and we have one of those races coming up next week. But Bobby, the question I have for you, do you think that amount of inactivity is hurting your brother?
Well, of course it does. If you run every day, Sam, you're always going to be better, as you well know. But Al has an awful lot of experience here, just like A.J. Foyt did, and we know how fast Foyt went this morning, so experience sometimes overcomes the youth.
Kenny Bernstein, he's averaging 216.8. Would you take this speed?
Well, I kind of felt that 217 was a good number, so I think that they're probably looking at 217. Now they waved him off.
Yep, the yellow flag comes out. The crew waves him off. So they will not take this run for Big Al, and Kenny, you might have taken that, but obviously they're seeing something you're not.
No, I don't know if I would or not at the time. Like I say, we felt this morning 218 might be the way to do it. 217. You got to remember, it can get cool tomorrow and next week. There's lots of time. They got 2 more chances, and they did the right thing.
Well, Kenny, get back to your top fuel or get a win down there at Memphis for us, and then get back up here so we can watch your cars in the Indy 500.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks for being with us. Kenny Bernstein on the phone from Memphis Motorsports Park as the time trials continue at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Welcome back to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'm Paul Page. Here is the way they line up at the moment. On the pole is Mario Andretti at 223.4 miles an hour. Scott Goodyear sits in the center of the front row, 222.3. Paul Tracy is outside, 220.2. Quite a variety of speeds there. The only other car to qualify is Danny Sullivan at 219.4. A number of cars have waved off. Here are the cars yet to qualify in the drawing of the line, but let us not forget that once the lineup is run through, any car that wants to present itself before 6 o'clock can do so. So there's still plenty of opportunity, and I think that may be why many of the cars are deciding to pull off and maybe hope for a little cooler temperatures. We have seen in those runs thus far that the track temperature is truly affecting the way the cars are performing. Now here is the new turn configuration at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That's turn 4. You can see those rumble strips down on the inside, the warm-up lane even further into that. We've been talking about the many changes that have occurred to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway over the winter. Our Sam Posey takes a little closer look.
A line chalked in the dirt almost 90 years ago, the basic form of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It is still the same today. While around the track, much has changed, and this year, the changes are particularly significant. For safety, the turns have been narrowed to slow the cars, and a warm-up lane has been added. The golf course is being rebuilt to designs by the celebrated Pete Dye. With this 18-hole championship course, called the Brickyard Crossing, the Speedway will soon be hosting the greats of golf as well as racing. On the track, the turns have been narrowed by replacing the innermost lane with grass. A separate lane has been created for cars warming up as well as going in and out of the pits. Rumble strips discourage shortcuts, while a new steel-reinforced outer wall anticipates next year's exciting debut of the NASCAR Stockers. The catch fencing is higher and stronger. Last year, drivers straightened out the turns by crossing the white line into the warm-up lane. This year, there is no crossing the line because there's no pavement beyond it, only the rumble strips and grass. The turns are no longer taken flat out. Passing is much tougher. The changes demonstrate the Speedway's ongoing concern for the safety of the drivers and the welfare of the fans. This is a place looking ahead, even as its traditions are rooted in the past. At Indianapolis, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
So the changes are subtle, but they are significant. Again, there is that rumble strip, and that below that white line used to be an apron. A lot of cars ran well below that line, but they don't do it anymore. Bobby Unser, what do you think of the changes?
Well, I think they're good, Paul. I think having a 2.5-mile track is good, number one. Number two, I believe that when you're on the track, that you have more banking. When they used to run on the apron down there, there just wasn't as much banking, so it's a lot faster the way it is, but it's going to take the drivers a little time to get used to it, especially when they develop bad habits for so many years of running down on the apron.
Bobby Unser with a great seat over the second turn, and what that three-time winner thinks of the track. But what about the active drivers? How do they feel about the changes to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
Well, it's going to be more critical, more difficult to put together 4 consistent laps. Like last year, you know, with the track the way it was, if your car was fairly good, you could count on it that you could go flat out 4 laps in a row.
For qualifying, it shouldn't affect it at all. You know, they should be just as fast.
Obviously, you have to have a very good handling car. I think everyone has had problems having good, consistent 4-lap practice runs. You know, everybody seems to be able to go quickly the first lap, and then they get progressively worse. So it's going to be very important in the next day or two to develop a car that may not ultimately be the quickest in any one lap, but over 4 laps is.
I don't think we're going to go as quick as Guerrero went last year, but I think we'll probably be around 226, 227 in qualifying.
Well, if the car goes to an understeer or gets loose, the guy's just going to have to slow down. You can't compensate by using a different part of the racetrack. Last year, if the car went to a push after a lap or two, all you had to do was move down below the white line and give yourself a little more room coming off the corner. This year, you can't do that. I don't think you're going to see the real consistent runs like we've seen in the past.
Well, I think the big key is going to be if you have your car a little bit out, you're going to see drastic changes in the times, whereas before, if you had a little understeer, you could drive down on the apron and kind of get through it.
There's only basically one quick groove, and everybody's using it, so even though people would say, well, last year the record run was done above the line, that was probably the cleanest part of the track. It's not so this year.
The guy that's going to get the pole is the guy that's going to be able to do it consistently for the 4 laps. I'm not so sure that the fastest lap of qualifying will be the guy that's on the pole.
Well, you've missed nothing. Jim Crawford has just pulled out of the pits. We've had a little lull in the qualifying here while they move Crawford's car down through the qualification run. Thus far today, since the track opened, though, it's been non-stop qualification. Jim Crawford moving up to speed. 12 cars have been presented. All 12 went out on an attempt. Only 4 of those have qualified. And the field average down at 221.360 miles an hour. So now Jim Crawford, who has been blindingly fast here in the past with Buick power, now with a new power plant in the back, is ready for his qualification attempt.
I think he's one of those truly modest men in racing. I spent some time with him at a vintage car race in Pittsburgh last year. He was signing autographs. He just wouldn't put himself forward. He is very, very modest. Has a boat that he leases out of Tampa, Florida.
219.6 miles an hour, his fastest lap thus far.
You know, when you think of Jim Crawford, you think of a crash that he had in practice back in 1990. We held our breath because 3 years before he had smashed his feet in another crash, and we just couldn't believe it was happening again. Miraculously, he was okay.
Jim Crawford okay, and by the way, continues to be very fast. A veteran of 7 Indianapolis 500. His best finish has been 6th. Do you have an update, Gary?
Well, we were talking with John Dangler, who heads for turn 4. He's a partner with Kenny Bernstein. Now, remember earlier when Al Unser Sr. was out there and they waved off in the 217 range, I asked Dangler, what do you take with Crawford? He said, I think we'll go anything over 218. Under that, I don't think we'll take it.
So Jim Crawford on the run, Bobby Unser.
Well, he definitely comes into turn 2 with a wiggle as he approached the turn, going right down to the apex, down where the rumble strips are. The front end of the car is wiggling. So the wind is getting to him a little bit too, Paul.
Fastest turn 4 speed has been 219.5 miles an hour. That was Mario's speed. Fastest backstretch, Mario at 234. Jim Crawford, 218.
Notice that for the first time today, we're seeing the car go in and out of sunny and clouded patches. See, clouds there, and then there'll be sun right there. Bobby, what effect does that have on Jim Crawford as you see him now coming underneath you in turn 2?
Ironically, Sam, the temperature has been cool. It's been almost chilly all day. I know some of the guys are talking about temperatures, but believe me, temperatures are not a problem. It's real cool today. It's the gusty winds. If you look around the racetrack and see the different flags, the different windsocks, you'll find the answer right there.
Jim Crawford's first lap, 215.095. Air temperature last reported here at 76 degrees. as a cloud layer begins to move in, not rain clouds, just a high, obscure layer. The track temperature, though, Bobby Unser, at 11 o'clock was 116 degrees. That's the track surface temperature. By 11:45, 123 degrees, Bobby.
Yellow.
Yeah. But Paul, that's still very cold. You know, you'll think back a lot of years here, we have the sun beating on the track and hot temperatures both. Then the pavement really gets up in temperature. Think about those numbers in the old days, and I don't mean that they can't happen today, but they're a lot hotter than what we have now. The problem today, believe me, in my opinion, is all the wind. These big grandstands all the way around the track really makes it gusty every place.
We have an average speed of Jim for 2 laps, 215 miles an hour. They decided that wasn't nearly good enough. Giant crowd here today for the first day of time trials, a run for the pole at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, a place known for crowds.
Amazingly, first day qualifying at Indianapolis attracts a crowd of nearly 300,000. That's the approximate equivalent of 3 sellout football crowds at the University of Michigan, 2.5 times the capacity of Churchill Downs, or nearly the population of Buffalo, New York.
Back in Indianapolis, qualification run underway, just completing his first lap, Gary Bettenhausen, looking to make it into his 21st Indianapolis 500, the first lap at 217.744 miles an hour.
One of the 3 Menard cars entered with these very, very bright paint jobs. Of course, it was one of the Menard cars that last year Al Unser Sr. drove to that surprising 3rd spot.
Buick power in these machines, Bobby. A development program that Buick called an end to, but the engines continue on.
Yes, they do. They're a lot quieter running, but they have a lot of power. Into turn 2 right then, incidentally. Got in a little bit early. Hit the apex a little bit early. Got very close to the wall and wiggled good coming off of turn 2, Paul.
He picked up his second lap considerably, 219.5 as opposed to the 217.7. So the second lap was good for a full 2 miles an hour.
He's definitely the emotional leader of the team, which of course contains also Nelson Piquet, the twice world driving champion, and Jeff Brabham. Jeff Brabham said, and Brabham, of course, a great driver in his own right, said, we take our cues from Gary. So you can see that even at the age of 51, he commands great respect from other talented drivers.
Teammate, and Gary loses it. Scrapes along the wall. Boy, it almost got airborne there for a second. But he gets it to a stop. Obviously, he's going to be okay. There is some damage to the car. From this angle, it doesn't look that severe. Bobby Unser, what did you see?
Well, we saw it all just perfectly coming around. What Gary did was he tried to cure it. The lap before, I told you, he went in just a little bit early, came out a little bit wide. This time, he went out wider and tried to hit the apex a little bit later, which would be a normal way and what he should have done. Unfortunately, the rear end just came right loose on the car very gradually. It didn't snap. Nothing broke on the car. Just came around real easy. And then he just slid right around and hit the wall. An awful lot of smoke. Here he is coming around right here, you can see. You just watch the rear end. It'll slowly start coming. He's in a perfect place on the track, but the rear end just slowly starts coming around. Nothing on the car broke. You can see all the smoke. This is what I was seeing. The smoke was coming right up where we are. The car right there almost got airborne, almost turned upside down. When you get the air underneath it like that, it'll do that. But he really didn't hit the wall too hard, and like you said, Paul, I really don't think the car's going to have all that much damage.
He was averaging 218.484 miles an hour, had completed his 3rd lap at 218.2 for that lap, was working his final lap when he lost it in the 2nd turn.
One of the motivations that the engineers had when they narrowed the turns here was to try to keep the cars closer to the walls as they were going through the turns to reduce the angle of incidence should a driver lose control. And I think it worked perfectly there. Had he been down on the apron, he might have spun up more and hit at a bigger angle.
Sam, and out of all of the accidents that we've seen so far this month of May, we've seen this track is a whole lot better. Nobody's hitting the wall nearly as hard as they used to, so what you've said has been working in every case that I've seen.
Interestingly enough, all the accidents in the month, save one, have been in the south turns, the 1st and 2nd turn. Here is one in the 2nd turn with Gary Bettenhausen.
See, the wind would have been blowing behind him as he came out of turn 2 here. The wind is blowing north out of the south.
Here he was as he worked through the short chute at the south end, made the turn, was high going into the corner, the back end came around.
See, just at the point where he lost it, he had the least downforce because the wind was suddenly behind him instead of ahead of him or beside him.
And you know, because of the real nice position that we have this year down here in turn 2 up in the home and suite, we can really see these things kind of happening before they happen. So I've never seen anything as nice as I have down here this year.
Did you feel the impact, Bobby, below you?
Well, I certainly heard it. Even with my earphones on, I could hear it really loud.
So Gary Bettenhausen's car now on the hook. He is out of the car and okay. We'll return with more of the Indianapolis 500 time trials after this message and a word from our ABC stations. No action at the moment here on the track. Al Unser Jr. sits waiting for them to clear the debris from Gary Bettenhausen's accident, which has stopped the action here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and put his Buick-powered machine on the hook and heading back to the garage area. This is the first accident during qualifications, certainly not the first one of the month. When practice began 1 week ago, it has been a very busy time. Nelson Piquet, remember his accident here last year? This is this year. Obviously, Nelson's learned a lesson or two about how to keep the car away from the wall. Scary moment, though. Paul Tracy, the fourth turn, spun her around, almost into the pit entrance, then got it under control. Robbie Buell, this was a little more serious, but it did show the over-the-winter engineering paid off, almost head-on into the wall. No injury to his feet, no broken bones. He does have a concussion. They say he'll be ready to move back to practice probably tomorrow or Monday. Davy Jones, well, this was an unusual accident. Just a quick brush with the wall, but it got worse. And that impact cracked the gearbox, and so they had to look for a new bell housing on that car. Ross Bentley. In the short chute, the south end plowed up a lot of grass, but barely kissed the wall. Didier Tays coming off of the fourth turn. Lost it, solid impact down to the inside. Fortunately, they shortened the pit wall. He missed it, came to a stop in the middle of the track. He was uninjured. Robbie Gordon this morning, warm-up practice for qualifying. South end of the track, brushed the car against the wall. It did some damage. And because of this, they had to pass on their first possibility at qualifying. Right now, rookie Robbie Gordon is with Jack Arute.
And Paul, Robbie Gordon is looking over his mentor's car, A.J. Foyt Jr. It still carries the number 14, which, by the way, you will never see at the Speedway again. The number was retired. But, Robbie, a lot of speculation that you may attempt to qualify this car this afternoon. What's the real story?
Well, I really don't know yet. You know, we crashed my car earlier this morning in warm-up. You know, we were running 220 miles an hour and hit the wall. My car probably won't be running until Monday, so I really don't know what the plan is for this afternoon yet.
How does a driver shake that off, especially in your early years at the Brickyard, when you hit one like that, when you're right on the verge of maybe having a good shot at a front row position, then it all goes down the tubes?
You know, it's really a bummer. You know, we ran 222 already this month, and we had some good times and some good speed. And to have a good car like that, and then all of a sudden it's gone, and you're looking at first weekend of qualifying, maybe passing by. But then, you know, we have A.J. Foyt who retired today. You know, he's going to give me 110% to get me up to speed before the race, and I think that's going to really help. It's just, it's nice to be driving for a guy like that.
What did Foyt say to you when you came back?
Foyt really didn't say much. You know, he didn't say much about retiring. He didn't say much about me crashing the car. I mean, you know, one of these deals, you know, we had a good car. You know, I can't believe it's gone. And, you know, the car's not gone. It can be fixed by Monday, and AJ's car is still good, so I really don't know what the plan is.
Well, the latest that we heard from A.J. Foyt is it doesn't look good for Robbie to qualify today, Paul Page. They want to sit him down and let him take a try tomorrow.
Earlier in the week, after the first brush with the wall, as we watch Al Unser Jr., who has begun to warm the engine for his qualification attempt. There's his dad, four-time winner, standing by to watch this run. A.J. was really getting on Robbie's back about how he was driving it, and then the legendary mechanic Smokey Unick walked into the conversation and says, A.J., just stop and remember your first years here. That kind of quieted A.J. down, at least for the moment. Al Unser Jr., a study of concentration. He's changed chassis from last year. It was a Galmer last year. It is a Lola this year.
And look at him tear out onto the track, Paul, very like Mario did about an hour ago now. And of course, Mario on the pole provisionally. When you think of Al, you got to think back to what happened in Victory Lane last year. It was one of the most emotional moments. You can almost see the tears starting there. That was last year after he'd won the closest Indy 500 in history. He said, "You just don't know what this means to me." It was his 10th try, and it finally came right. He's just 31 years old, though, now, Paul, and of course, he's got a huge career ahead of him.
Celebrated his 31st birthday the day after the race in Long Beach, California. 221.5 miles an hour, his fastest speed thus far in the month of May. His warm-up laps continue.
I very like his sense of humor. He has a big chunk of the Indy wall that he hit in that crash with Emerson Fittipaldi in 1989 at his farm in Albuquerque.
Jack Arute, you have an update.
Well, Paul, it's about 10 degrees cooler right now than when Mario Andretti made his run for the pole position. When we talked to Al Unser Jr., he said that he thought would be a benefit to him. A lot of cloud cover has come in, and right now it's occluding the sun. A good break for a racer that's looking for a fast time.
14 attempts at qualification thus far, but only 4 cars qualified for the Indianapolis 500 at the moment. Track surface temperatures and winds, as Bobby Unser told you, beginning to affect these drivers. Al Unser Jr. takes the green flag and heads for Bobby Unser in turn 2.
He's really nice down through here, Paul. He looks like he's on a rail. He's right down, touches the white line in the middle of the turn, out very close to the wall. Right now, he's got the thing glued to the track.
Through the first 2 turns at 217 miles an hour. Looking for the backstretch trap speed. Actually comes through the backstretch at 227 miles an hour. Gary Gerald is in the pits with his wife, Shelley.
Shelley, tell us about the emotion, the anxieties that you feel at a time as he completes that first lap right now.
Well, it's kind of like a workout because your chest, when you hear it.
And how is it, remembering that the last time you saw him on this track and the dramatic finish when he held off Scott Goodyear a year ago to get the win?
Same kind of feeling, not quite as intense, but the same kind of feeling. Your heart wants to just come out of your chest. So, and if he can keep doing that, he'll be looking real good with what's been happening today. So,
I think that gives you a good feel for what Indianapolis is all about. Paul?
221.997 miles an hour on the first lap for Al Unser Jr. He is already on the home stretch from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Very proud of that New Mexico heritage, as is all the family. In fact, he has a Newell motor coach that has a total southwestern motif inside it. It's just beautiful, parked here at the Speedway. Bobby, he's still looking good.
Paul, he's using all the racetrack down here. He has a very good line. Everybody up here just giving me the good okay signal because he's really where he should be through the turn down here.
222.063 for the second lap, averaging 222.030.
You know, Shelley mentioned the high emotions. The driver, obviously, his heart rate triple probably what it would be normally. Your heart almost in your mouth as you drive around, 1 lap to go, but yet you must be very calm and deliberate with your moves at the wheel. So your heart races, but your body must be very cool.
Bobby, if he can keep this pace up, he can push Paul Tracy off the front row.
Yes, well, he just went down just a little tiny bit under the white line, not very much, maybe 2 inches. Right next to the wall coming off means he has a very slight push, but not very bad, obviously.
Remember, little Al has never been on the front row. Twice he's qualified 5th, including the first time he ever raced here, but he's never enjoyed a front row slot, and this time might be his best shot at it.
Off the 4th and final turn, the checkered flag lies just ahead. We look for the 4th lap time and speed as Al Unser Jr. completes his qualification run at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The last lap, 221.185 miles an hour, a 4-lap average of 221.773. That pushes Paul Tracy off the front row and puts Al Unser Jr. on the outside of row 1. Completing lap 1 of a qualification attempt at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, a man to very definitely watch. Raul Boesel. Last year, he substituted on the Dick Simon team for Hiro Matsushita, who was injured in the practice. That got him a full-time ride with the team. This year, he's looking very strong. The first lap at 221.7 miles an hour.
Let me focus your attention a little more. This man could win Indy this year. He is very, very tough here. Despite not having much of a record here, he's very good this year.
Yesterday, he was the top speed of the day. He was on Wednesday as well. His fastest speed, 225.592 miles an hour. Now he's on the home stretch, completing his second lap in qualification.
His best finish was third back in 1989. His two brothers both had careers in jumping show horses, and Raul was headed that way too until he fell in love with racing. He has a background in Formula One too, Bobby.
Bobby's second lap at 222.5.
He's got a real good line through here. I can watch him go on the short chute right out to the wall, come down, touch the white line, out very close to the wall, and it gets better every time he comes by.
Bobby, he's on rails the way little Al was just a few moments ago.
No question about it, Sam. Down here it looks like it's a piece of cake driving, but we know it isn't that easy.
Lap speed went up from 221.7 to 222.5. He's now completing lap number 3, just one lap to go. We wait for the speed to be posted, 222.480 miles an hour. He's averaging 222.2 to this point, and that would move little Al off the front row and replace little Al with Raul.
He wiggled just a little tiny bit coming in here into turn 2, but didn't get out of it, went down the back straightaway, very good.
His car owner, Dick Simon, traditionally enters a high number of cars, 4 or 5 cars in each year's race. Most of those are sponsorship deals of one kind or another. This is his ace in the hole, the one where he puts his best driver at the wheel, and Raul Boesel is terrific.
Completing his 4-lap, 10-mile qualification run with a final lap at 222.8 miles an hour. He got faster every lap. Here's the Valvoline speed board, averaging 222.379 miles an hour, and that puts him in the middle of the front row, right alongside of the provisional pole sitter Mario Andretti. So Raul Boesel is into the race. Now remember, Gary Bentonhausen had that accident, and Jack Arut's now with him.
Paul, he's just been released from the Hanna Medical Center, an okay checkup, but what happened?
Well, the first 2 laps, the car was pushing the front end real bad coming off of 2, and I knew I had an average going good enough to make the race, so I figured, well, I don't want to have the front end take off and bump the fence, so I rolled out of the throttle a little bit, getting into 2, just to scrub some speed off, and coming off the corner, the back end let go this time. It just spun so fast on me, I don't know what happened.
A tough break, but will you be able to go back out later today in a backup car?
Well, they could probably fix this one. All it did was bump the right rear wheel a little bit and bend the suspension.
Well, Paul, he's got to get back to his garage area and see if he can get his mechanics going to work on that deal.
Now that's good news for Gary Bentonhausen. Jeff Brabham, by the way, should be next out. And here's the way they line up at the moment. Mario on the pole, then Boesel, then Scott Goodyear. In the second row now is Allinger Jr., Paul Tracy, and Danny Sullivan. 6 cars have qualified. Now it's time for our regular feature on what's new in the world of sports, science, and technology. Roberto Guerrero, last year's pole sitter, is on the track. Jeff Brabham went out, presented the car, but did not take the green flag and rolled back in. So now Roberto Guerrero begins the warm-up. He's completed his first warm-up lap.
Roberto Guerrero, of course, another member of the Bernstein team, a guy with a long history here, a brilliant first 4 races where he had a couple of seconds, a third and a fourth in his first 4. But I think that the image which is retained certainly by most of us is what happened here last year. Look at the green car as it suddenly swerved. He was on the pole and this happened. And it was an eerily fitting, for a lot of people it fitted the notion that he was somehow still suffering from the residue of a crash that had put him in a coma for 2 weeks back in '89. That was nonsense. He was just caught out by the cold temperature of the track. But Roberto still is somewhat under a cloud. He needs a great performance to shake that off. And I think this weekend, or certainly this month, may provide that for him.
Trying to qualify for his 9th Indianapolis 500. Fastest lap of the month, 224.4, Bobby Unser.
Yes, and through here, I'd say conservative. He has a good line going in. He doesn't quite get down to the white line, not getting out to the wall coming out. So he's still searching for what he's looking for, Paul.
Through the first turn at 218 miles an hour. He fell off to 215 in turn 2. He's running 224 down the backstretch. So his turn average is down at 216.3 miles an hour. He's going to need to pick up the pace.
Kenny Bernstein tells me that Roberto is a natural leader, and the other members of the team have looked to him. He's, of course, running the whole season, so he has the technical background in the car that the other two men do not. He's a marvelous, marvelous human being.
And pick up the pace he does. He went down the front stretch at 230 miles an hour. He's now averaging 220.437 miles an hour on his first lap. Now let's go pit side. Here's Gary Gerald.
Well, Junior, the defending champion of this race, 221.7. How satisfied are you with that speed?
Well, we're pretty happy with it. You know, I was searching for the first 2 rows, first 3 rows right in that area. I think we're pretty safe with that speed in those rows because the track's much narrower. Turn 1's going to be exciting for race day, so I wanted to be in the first 3 rows for sure.
Your dad came down and had some words after he had been on the track. Did he offer some advice that helped you out?
Yeah, he did. He told me the changes in the track, and really, he told me what I was expecting to hear, and I had adjusted for it, but I didn't adjust enough.
Well, an Indy 500 champion paying attention to Dad could have hoped to squeak out a little bit more. We wish you well on race day.
Thank you.
Al Unser Jr. in the field. Now we're watching Roberto Guerrero. He's completed his 3rd lap. He was averaging 220.027 miles an hour. 2nd lap at 220.599. 3rd lap at 219.053 miles an hour. Bobby, he's still looking pretty strong.
He's looking good right now. In turn 3, when he came off over here, he had to back clear out of the throttle, though. The car jumped right out of the groove. Almost had a little wreck, almost got the wall. But Roberto kept it going, looking good.
220 miles an hour, Sam. I bet they take it.
I think they will, too. Bobby, he did brush the wall in turn 3 on opening day, so he's had an adventuresome month. Yep, they're going to take it, and I think be well pleased with the fact they did.
So Roberto Guerrero qualifies for the Indianapolis 500. 218.5 on the last lap, a 4-lap average of 219.645 miles an hour. That is good enough for the outside of the 2nd row. There's the Valvoline speed board. We'll return with more of the Indianapolis 500 time trials after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Qualifications continue at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. On lap 3 of his qualification attempt is Scott Pruitt. Drove for the True Sports team last year, then had to form his own team to get going this year. His first lap at 215 miles an hour. That is a pass that is slower than he has been practicing here. He's been up at 219.9, and I would suggest one that is not safe to take. But still, Scott Pruitt is going to keep it out on the track and see if he can get another lap or 2 in before they have to make that decision.
It's certainly a lap in which he was trying as hard as he could, that he wiggled right under where you are, Bobby, and here he comes to you again.
He's got a good line coming through here, Sam. In fact, he looks very good. But remember, this is a Chevrolet A engine. He's probably given away about 30 to 40 horsepower on the Chevrolet C's and the Ford engine.
Averaging 216.164 miles an hour. Scott Pruitt.
It's funny, you know, of course, he went from a perceived front-line team, the True Sports team last year, to a perceived second-line team this year. But in many ways, Scott Pruitt, with a lap to go in his qualifying here, seems to be a happier man, and he's been very effective in some of these races.
Looking to qualify for his 4th Indianapolis 500. Averaging 216 miles an hour, but Bobby, looks like the speed's coming up a bit. 217.3.
Paul, he has an excellent line through here. I have to rate Scott as probably at least equal number 2 through this turn down here. He's using all the track, and he's in the right place all the time.
The question, of course, is will he take a 216 mile an hour qualification run?
Oh,
Watching
I think
for the yellow flag.
He's going to take
They're going to take it.
Good decision.
Scott Pruitt qualifies into the Indianapolis 500.
All my hat is off to him. I think they made a good decision on that. They have less engine and an old car, and I think they did excellent on that.
Last lap was a quick one, too, at 217.5, so his speed built throughout the run. Average 216.794 miles an hour. Scott Pruitt is in the Indianapolis 500. Now, unquestionably, Nigel Mansell is one of the most talented and fascinating drivers ever to come to Indianapolis. Recently, Sam Posey visited with him.
Last year, Nigel Mansell won the World Driving Championship, and he was the overwhelming favorite of European fans. Moving to America and racing Indy cars, he is learning new tracks and seeking to establish a following among American fans. Before the season, I caught up with him at his new home in Florida and asked him exactly what makes him so good.
Is anything physical part of that? Do you think I have sharper eyes, or?
Yeah, that's for me to know and for everyone else to guess. I mean, I'm not going to tell anyone why. I mean, that's the advantage, isn't it?
His first IndyCar race was on a road course in Australia. He won. But on the oval at Phoenix, he center punched the wall. Nigel is great, but not perfect. People love him most for his passion. Now he comes to the oval at Indy. With the prediction of how things will go, his close friend, golfing great Greg Norman.
Oh, I think at Indy, he's going to take the crowd by storm. No question about it, because, you know, they're going to give him a quick car for his time trials. I mean, he's going to go out there and he's going to prove to everybody. And I hope he doesn't go to a point where he goes beyond his proof and gets himself hurt. But he's going to prove that, yes, he can come and just fire straight into Indy and come in Indianapolis 500 and do very, very good. And I bet he just gets right up there in the first 2 or 3 days, just because I know Nigel.
Well, just remember, this is his first qualification ever on an oval.
And Nigel has just taken the green flag. Now, let's consider some of the history in the past month of this man. He cracked the wall at Phoenix. He had a terrible bruising injury to his back. Still, he came back and sat on the pole at Long Beach. Then he went to the hospital for surgery. They put over 100 stitches in his back to try and drain blood out of a cavity. On Wednesday, just 14 days after that surgery, he arrived here at the Speedway to start his rookie test. Rookie for a world champion. Nevertheless, it's required. He started at the 185-mile-an-hour phase in the morning. By the end of the afternoon, he had passed the test, was running 4th quick of the day at 224 miles an hour. He's just completed his first lap in qualification attempt at the Speedway at 219.984 miles an hour.
That was probably the best first day that a driver has ever had at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, last Tuesday.
Jack Arute, you have an update.
Well, Paul, in that last practice session this morning, they had a problem with their pop-off valve. They exchanged valves. It is untried and untested. They were extremely concerned about this qualifying run. But the one thing that offset that concern is his fastest time of the month was set at almost precisely this time in the afternoon.
Well, Nigel Mansell on the straightaway. He's completed his second lap at 218.013 miles an hour. Bobby, the speed's fallen off a bit.
Yes, it is, Paul, but by the same token, not exactly. As he came out of turn 2 here, he kind of got him a breath because he's not quite in the groove. He's out a little bit wide, and he's into turn 2 just a little bit early. He's missing the groove by probably 2 to 3 feet places.
In the inevitable comparison with his teammate Mario, Bobby, Nigel is not posting the numbers. He doesn't have quite as high straightaway speed, and he's way off in the turns.
Well, when you come out of turn 2, for example, slow, where I am, you're going to be slow down the straightaway. The same thing is going to be where you guys are, Sam.
Because the straightaways here are 5/8 of a mile long each, the exit to the second and fourth turn is absolutely critical. Nigel Mansell carrying 230 down the main stretch and then 212 in the first turn. His third lap at 218.124.
As he came through turn 2 this time, he was high all the way around turn 2. Smooth, but a little too high. Missed the groove by about 1.5 feet again, Paul.
A defending Formula One champion has never won Indy, interestingly.
An interesting change in career path, too. The reigning world champion waves off. Nigel Mansell will not take this run. He was averaging 218.7 miles an hour. Gary Gerald, you're with Carl Haas, the car owner.
Carl, just before they waved him off, you were saying you didn't want to take it even though you weren't in headset range with your crew. Why?
Oh, we think we can go faster later in the day. We had a bad valve this morning, and it really messed them up.
You didn't get any practice time after you changed the valve, is that correct?
Well, yeah, but I think it didn't do anything different, right?
Okay, so we will look forward to seeing you later in the day?
Yeah, he'll get back in the line. Yeah.
And still a threat for the pole?
Well, there's a lot of time left, sure.
Okay, thanks, Carl.
there may be the strategy that everybody else is thinking about. There may be a lot of time left in the day. Here's the way they line up at the moment. The front row is still Mario Andretti on the pole. We'll be back. On ABC tonight, Scott Brayton is on the racetrack at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the backstretch on his third lap of a 4-lap, 10-mile qualification attempt. His first lap, 221.2. Second lap, 220.2. He is averaging 220 miles an hour. 221 was his first lap, 221.2. And he has had a spectacular month thus far. He's been very consistent. Mark Bridges and the crew have spent some extra time in the evening getting this car ready to go, and now he starts his last of 4 laps.
This is a superb drive by a man whose best ever performance in his career was here in qualifying a few years back. He put a car in the middle of the front row. He almost had the pole. He's lived off that in many ways since. He deserves much greater success.
Sam, he just came off of turn 2, brushed the outside retaining wall. Now he's looked good every time he's come through here, but boy, he flushed her with a right rear tire. Let's see how he gets through the other turns, if he's got any damage.
He's really hooked up, isn't he?
Yes, he's hooked up, but boy, he was close on that.
This would be his 12th Indy if he is able to make it through this last lap.
Off of the 4th turn, the checkered flag waits. The lap 3 speed, 218.335 miles an hour, as Scott Brayton has completed his qualification run. 4th lap at 218.659 miles an hour. 4-lap average, 219.637. There's the Valvoline speed board, and that will put him on the inside of the 3rd row. Now remember, these positions will change throughout this afternoon, but under the Indy rules, everyone that qualifies on the first day is locked. When they qualify tomorrow on the second day of time trials, they line up behind Brayton. Here is that exit off of turn 2. Take a look at this. The camera mounted in the wall. And Scotty tried to brush it off the wall for us. Now Nigel Mansell, remember, pulled off the run. Jack Arute is with him.
Nigel, a lot of disappointment.
It is after the last 3 days. I mean, the car's going very well, and today, for some reason, there's a couple of problems with it that shouldn't be.
Your impressions of the Indianapolis emotional seesaw?
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, I'd like to thank USAC and Tony George of the Speedway for making it possible for me to be here, because, as you know, I underwent an operation a couple of weeks ago, and we had to readjust things. But yeah, I mean, it's very different to what I've been used to, and to sort of put 4 qualifying laps together is very different. But as I said, for 3 days, car's been running well, and there's a couple of hiccups with it, which we'll try and sort out.
When a car hiccups, as you say, does that put a lot more pressure on you as a driver to put that out of your mind when you strap yourself in it?
No, not really. I mean, that's a nice thing, being the present world champion and the points leader in the IndyCar Series. I mean, I don't think we've got anything to prove. If the car works well around here, you'll go well, and if it doesn't, you won't.
Good luck.
Thank you.
So Nigel Mansell, they will take the car back. No doubt they can get that car in the lineup for the end of the day. The number 6, Mario Andretti on the board as the pole sitter at the moment.
IndyCar Moment, brought to you by Miller Genuine Draft. The 1992 IndyCar World Series Championship points race came down to the last race of the season. The points leader coming into that race was owner-driver Bobby Rahal. Rahal needed to finish 4th or better to clinch his 3rd series championship and keep Michael Andretti from winning his 2nd consecutive championship. Bobby Rahal came from 6th place on the grid to finish 3rd, capturing his 3rd IndyCar World Series championship for his Miller Genuine Draft team.
3-time world champion Nelson Piquet is on the track now, and Bobby, he is looking good.
Oh, he's really looking good, Paul. If I had to pick the guy that's gone through turn 2 the best today, I'm going to pick Nelson Piquet. He is literally in a perfect place all the time through here.
Speed average 217.969 miles an hour. That should get him on the outside of the 3rd row if he can keep the pace up.
An extraordinary performance when you realize that he left this track last year in an ambulance, facing months of recuperation after he banged up his feet really, really badly. He had no practice between then and now. He's come out and dialed in this fantastic performance.
And maintained throughout that year his sense of humor. He averaged 217.949 miles an hour. You can walk up to him in the pits, he'll joke about that accident. But he is now in the field on row 3, the outside position. Nelson Piquet has qualified for his first Indianapolis 500. So here is the way they are lined up now. And again, this is provisional until 6 o'clock this evening as Nelson Piquet brings his car into the pits. Row 1, Andretti, Raul Boesel, Scott Goodyear. In the second row, Al Unser Jr., Paul Tracy, Roberto Guerrero. Row number 3, Scott Brayton, Danny Sullivan, and now rookie Nelson Piquet. And alone in the fourth row is Scott Pruitt. We have had 22 presentations, 21 attempts, and 10 qualified. Bobby Rahal is next. We'll return with more of the time trials after this message and a word from our ABC stations.